planned economy era, China's education has become more and more popular among common people. The latest data is that the literacy rate for the younger generation is above 90%. So that's the first observation. Second observation is when I look at either what happened around me or what I can read from the news, superstition, this kind of behavior happens even more often in higher educated and higher positioned groups. So that got a little bit of contradiction with the division of the duality systems you listed. And so my doubt is whether this kind of duality system rooted not on the education difference, but more in such as incomplete institutional setting and might in the incomplete culture incorporation during the socialist eras. So that's some of my comments that we discussed with you. Thanks very much.
I'm sorry to ask you for briefer comments because we have many inputs to the panel and we want also to listen to our colleagues.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. My name is Ela Samuel. I'm from the Federal University of Brazil. I would also like to ask Pedro a question. First of all, if his work would be available, I would like it very much. Could we have access to your paper? Yes. And the second is, I was curious because in one of your chapters, there was the question of gender. And I would like to know how caste discrimination affects differently men and women. And if the programs for poverty reduction try to address this issue. In Brazil, for example, the Bolsa Família is 70% paid directly to women. And several other poverty reduction programs address the question of gender very directly. I would like you to comment. Thank you.
I have a question for both Francis and Gao concerning the metaphor of porcupine. Even though I've never seen a porcupine pond before, but I saw a picture, so I'm guessing porcupine can have quills, but it can have longer quills and shorter quills. So I will leave it open. But anyway, do we need to grow quills before we can stick together? Or we can stick together without quills? Or the other way around, as Gao's case, we cover up the quills with a party membership or maybe party flag, and then we uncover it. The second thing is that since there are shorter quills and longer quills, so do we have, or do we need to use the metaphor of a concubine instead of porcupine? Because when marginalized people are satisfied with the status of a concubine, they're fine. But if you want to have the same length of quills, they run into trouble immediately. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question that was provoked by the last summary of Antonádia, that this is about the similarities of these countries and how far they are, in my view, much more different than similar. Because, for example, Antonádia, we are saying that referring to recognition and clean water, sewage, and electricity. You say most of the people in our countries don't have this. And this is certainly not true for Brazil, in which we have more than 90% of people who have electricity, more than 90% of people with clean water, and sewage is then 35% around. Okay, but those are hard data that are very important to compare. For example, if we are talking, the title of the session is Social Inclusion and Social Justice. Okay, so it's very important to have some hard base of the party. Not, I mean, cultural issues and recognition issues are very important, but need to be interlinked with issues of, for example, the dynamic in the 5 countries. This is the question I would like to be answered by each one. I don't know if we will have time now, but maybe in the next session. That is, how, for example, the countries are better is from $2,000 income per capita income of India to $15,000 per capita income of Russia. In the middle, China $8,000 and South Africa and Brazil around $12,000. It's all power purchase parity. Okay, so very different countries, but India particularly dramatically different. At the same time, so what was happening with the inclusion, poverty alleviation in the 5 countries in the last 10 years? What is the projection for the next 5? On the other side, Gini index, inequality, is, for example, China, poverty has been diminishing dramatically, but inequality has been growing dramatically. In Brazil, both things have been improving, but still the data, the situation is very negative. In Russia, there is a lot of increase of wealth because of the oil and money, let's say, the oil wealth, but inequality has been growing significantly in the last 20 years. So I think we need to put the whole cultural issues in basic comparison, in basic data, in inequality and poverty alleviation.
No, just 2 quick comments. The first one that I think that came out of this roundtable is that the idea of exchanging research on our countries. And what we see is that there are already some research going on. Gao mentioned a couple of them. I know Antonádia is doing research in South Africa, some other people in India, and so forth. So there is already the construction of images from the social science point of view that is being done in our countries, and this is very interesting. Maybe we could try to build a sort of like a library of books and research articles and so forth, like Pedro's research, because of course we're going to make mistakes. We have been reading research that the Americans and the Europeans do on Brazil, and sometimes we, this research has a lot of problem, and but this raises a lot of interesting questions too for us to discuss. How are we going to see each other's countries, and how are we going to be seen by each one of the other countries? One. And the second one, which is also very interesting, is something that Antonádia aimed at saying, I guess, that is the persistence of non-modern forms in our countries, right? And Francis also explored this. And we also have this kind of issue in Brazil. It's not only in China, as Gao showed, or the case system in India, that's always a matter of hot debate. And you name it in Russia, there are so many ethnic groups. In Brazil, we're in a very bad moment for the Indian issue in this country, which is very conservative and developing in this moment against the Indian minority. That's not even 1 million people. It's only 800,000 people. Nonetheless, they have a lot of visibility in our nation for historical and ideological reasons. So I would say that the persistence of non-modern, to put it somewhere, because I didn't want to say of multiple modernities, it's too imperial, the idea of modernity is so much North Atlantic centered. So anyhow, but I think this is another big issue that came out of the roundtable.
Last question for me. Have I seen a hand over there or a girl? Okay.
Praveen Jha from Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. It's not as much a question as a comment which probably connects with all the 4 presentations. In some sense, the running thread was notions around public policies. Whether you're talking of specific programs in case of India or social justice, Francis's question, what should be done, etc. And if we are thinking about that, possibly from the way I look at things, and obviously given my own disciplinary background, which is economics, there is a particular vantage point which influences my own way of looking at things, which is the most significant sort of feature of last 30 years, globally and for BRICS, is something called the ascendancy of neoliberalism. Now, this is extremely powerful. This is something which has sort of acquired, very specific dimensions, undertones, weights and measures in different parts of the world, in different ways, sure enough. Brazil has handled it differently compared to India and so on and so forth. To me, it appears that unless we include that in our overall framework of analysis, there's something which is sort of being missed in a very serious fashion. To use Shakespeare's metaphor, it's like, Prince of Denmark not being there in Hamlet. And that, of course, is a problem. The notion of social justice, for instance, the way it's kind of structured in the last, let's say, 2 to 3 decades all over, it has very powerful organic connections with this kind of neoliberal ideology, etc. So, I think it would be good for me to know a little more through your works, through your sort of not responses, immediate responses, I'm saying, but in terms of the way you're thinking about these issues. These were excellent presentations. How do we factor that in the kind of concerns that you have been raising? Of course, I will be talking about some of these tomorrow.